Just after 10, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the November Extension Master Gardener webinar. This is actually going to be our last webinar of the year, and then we'll get started back in 2021. I'm working hard on getting a great lineup for us for 2021 of some fantastic speakers, so keep an eye out for that list in the coming months. Today's session, since it is our last one of the year, we wanted to focus on state office updates and then really open the floor for a question and answer with Dave, Devin, and myself are all here. So as you have any questions, as we're going through material in the slides, and then afterwards, feel free to type any questions into the chat box. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will be ready to go. All right. So the first update, and I've gotten a lot of questions through email with this when we asked for questions before this session, focused on our volunteer management system and that we are making a move if you haven't yet heard. So we are moving away from the volunteer management system, our VMS that's run through UC Davis, and we will be moving to a system called Better Impact. I'm really excited about Better Impact. They have a lot of really great features, very user-friendly, and I think it's going to be a really good switch for the program. We will be making the switch in early 2021. We don't have a specific date on that yet, just because the processes of getting this set up through Virginia Tech and Cooperative Extension took a little bit longer than we would have liked, but we are still making really good progress, and our team of all of the master volunteer program leaders will be meeting with CALS IT and Better Impact in the coming weeks to help get that system all set up and ready to go. We will have access to the VMS, UC Davis's system through March 31st. So if you are an admin in the system and need to move documents or anything like that, we do have access to that system for a little while longer. And so do keep an eye out for trainings in the coming months. I don't have those scheduled yet just because we need to do a little bit more on the back side of things before we can start training admins and volunteers on the system. So information that will be transferred are volunteer contact information and our volunteer hours records, which means please, please, please update your profile. Make sure that everyone in your unit has updated their profile because this is the information that's going to be transferred over, and it'll make everyone's lives a lot easier if it's correct and up to date when it moves into the new system. Things that are not transferred are going to be your documents and our calendars and all of the other materials like that. And so we actually recommend that each unit starts their own shared Virginia Tech Google Drive folder that could be accessed by Master Gardeners so that you could store your newsletters, and if you have an association, bylaws that are kept in the VMS, pictures, anything else that storage-wise that you use the VMS for. I think Google Drive will be a really great way to house all of that information. So if you have any additional questions about Better Impact, please feel free to type them in. And then we can, oh, great question, Barb. So Barb Wilson just says, should folks enter any 2021 hours into the VMS or hold off for the new system? Please hold off and put those into the into the Better Impact system. So we are hoping we'll just migrate data through December 31st or so. So it'll be a lot easier if we can transfer that just as one update so everybody can pull reports for this year, and then next year's reports for the 2021 year can just be pulled all through Better Impact, so you don't have to worry about the two system switch. So do hold off on inputting any hours that are done in January before we migrate systems. Thanks for that question. And if there's any others that you think of, feel free to type them in and we can get to those at the end of the session. The next bit I have is the International Master Gardener Conference. So hopefully you've all heard that we have made the decision to go virtual. It was a difficult decision, but we do feel like it's in the best interest for all of our participants, and just not knowing what the future is going to hold with the rest of the pandemic. We want to make sure that everyone's comfortable coming to the conference. And then it's also, good for our program to know that we can have set plans in place. Registration will open April 5th of 2021, and our full schedule will be released in March. We are limiting this to the first 2,500 registrants. So if you're interested in coming, please make sure that you register early. And there will be hands-on workshops and things like that that will be limited in space. So if you're interested in workshops and want to make sure you have a space at the conference, please do register as soon as you can. A couple other highlights that we're really excited about for the conference are small group networking and discussions. So there's going to be some opportunities for you to have conversations with master gardeners from across the country and in other countries, which is quite exciting. And so we've planned a handful of those throughout the conference. We'll have 2 special evening events, and then we're really trying, because we can't be in Norfolk and we can't bring everybody to see Virginia and take part in that. We are going to try our best to have as much feature time for Virginia as we can. So our volunteer tours team will be working on this, as well as our state office team. So if you find any great videos or great virtual tours that you've seen of places in Virginia, feel free to send them to me, because those are things that we can include on our conference website, just to make sure that people get excited about Virginia, and whenever they can travel again, that they consider Virginia as a serious possibility for tourism and for enjoying a vacation. All right, Dave.
All right, thanks, Kathleen. And before we get into this next slide, there's a couple of questions that have come in on the chat. Wendy asked if we can share the information. I assume you're talking about Better Impact, Wendy. Share that information with the volunteers.
I'm gonna unmute. Yes, feel free to share any information about Better Impact with volunteers. It is officially passed through all of the things it needed to within VCE and Virginia Tech. So this is officially our new system. So I'm happy to have you share that information with volunteers.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, there's 2 other questions. One from Scott asking about the documents that are currently housed in the VMS. Will they be able to load those into the new system eventually?
I do not believe so, at least not to the extent that our VMS holds them right now, which is where I think the Google Drive is going to be that new place to house those. As far as I'm aware, and I'm still learning the new system, so I could be wrong on this, but the documents that are allowed take place at the upper admin level. So that would be things that the state office will share with the program across the state. So something like putting in our handbooks or any documents related to trainings or civil rights or things like that. Those kind of upper admin documents are what will be housed in this system.
All right, and then the last one from Barb, I assume, Barb, you mean the registration cost for IMGC. Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are looking at $150 per person for the registration fee. And similar to what you experienced with Master Gardener College this year, you will have full access to all of the recordings of all of the keynote speakers and all of the concurrent sessions for a defined period of time. So hopefully that answers the question, Barb. All right. Well, feel free to continue adding questions to the chat while we proceed through our presentation. One of the things that I wanted to share with you all that we as a team have been talking about for weeks, if not months now, is the need to create what we're calling a task force on accessibility and connections. And some of you may recall, especially if you've been with the Master Gardener program for more than 4 or 5 years, you may recall a few years ago, the agency launched a parity study of all of our master volunteer programs. And, you know, the results of that were not surprising. We knew anecdotally that, you know, the clientele that we're reaching and even the composure of our, or composition, excuse me, of our volunteer groups locally is not necessarily completely reflective of the communities that where we live and serve. And we had not made any specific strides toward dealing with that other than having multiple conversations within the state office off and on. But, you know, in light of the racial unrest that we're experiencing right now across the country and stemming back, you know, to May and all of the events that transpired in May and following, that conversation has been elevated to a much higher level. And, you know, Devin and Kathleen and I have spent probably hours by now discussing what we can do as a program to make sure that we are reflecting the best practices that we can to make sure that everyone within our communities feel welcome to participate in the program if it's something that they are interested in. So several weeks ago, Devin and Kathleen and I had a conversation with a couple of folks on campus. We have a diversity and inclusivity officer or position within our college, Dr. Siobhan Thorpe, and also Dr. Michelle DeRamo, who is a university faculty member, on trying to develop a strategy to move forward so that this isn't just an academic exercise, that we are doing something meaningful. And we are still in the planning phases of that, but our work with Siobhan and Michelle, I think, is putting us on the path that we want to be on. And over the course of the next few weeks, we'll be assembling, assembling this task force, and then meeting hopefully very early in 2021 to put a charge before our group and start putting some feet to the ideas and thoughts that the three of us have had and been mulling over for several weeks now. One of the most encouraging things I think that I heard from Siobhan specifically was there's not really a single end goal to this, that this is a process that takes time, that takes a lot of time, honestly, to accomplish, and you never really reach the end of it. It's something that we aspire to do, and it's something that we continue to work toward. So I know that's nothing very specific and it's kind of vague, but that's kind of where we are at the moment, except to assure you that our office has taken this very seriously, and we are looking forward to taking a critical look at how we do business, where we do business, and how we communicate the things that we do to make sure we are not creating or presenting any barriers that might make folks reluctant to inquire about us or be a part of us. So it really is about making sure that everyone feels welcome at the end of the day. So that's all I have to share. Also, I was talking and not even looking at the slide, but we also will make sure to include, and we've had a couple of at least email exchanges with folks from VSU to make sure that they are involved and participate in this process as well, because we have developed some fantastic new partners through Devin's Facebook Live series over the summer, but with many of our VSU faculty, some of which we have not worked with before in the past, and their communications office is fantastic. So we are very excited about having them join us in this work. So one of the challenges that this year has presented kind of centers around the milestone recognition aspect. And again, that's one of the highlights for me personally with Master Gardener College. And since we were virtual and were not able to incorporate this into this year's celebration as part of the state conference, Devin did create the Milestone Booklet, like we normally distribute at Master Gardener College. And it is now available. So if you have a smartphone, I would encourage you to take it out and turn on your camera and take a snapshot of the QR code that you see there, and it will take you directly to a link in your browser on your phone, and you can access the awards booklet that has everyone that achieved a milestone in 2019 that would have been recognized at Master Gardener College back in June, or locally after college if they did not attend through the local extension office. And again, with all of the restrictions in place because of the pandemic, we recognize also that it's been a challenge for local offices to be able to have those local celebrations and distribute the certificates and pins, like you normally would. They all were shipped out, as you see here on the slide, back in September. And hopefully your agent or your local coordinator did receive them and has been in contact with you in some way, shape, or form. One, to thank you and to acknowledge your accomplishment, but also to get those two items to you. So again, from the state office perspective, we are grateful for everyone that is listed in that book. And we are extremely grateful that many of you are continuing to be involved with our program in spite of the pandemic. I know that has presented some unique challenges, but just know that the contributions that you make locally in your community does have a profound impact, and it has immense value. And our office in particular does not take that for granted. And we are sincerely grateful that you continue to partner with us as we try to have a positive impact on our communities and across the Commonwealth. So thank you on behalf of the state office.
All right, and with the pandemic, we know that the 2020 volunteer hour requirement has been waived. So those 20 volunteer hours that are typically required, but we did not waive the continuing education hours. So that's your 8 CE requirement. And so if you are lacking in CE or you know of Master Gardener peers who might be, feel free to direct them to our website, the mastergardener.ext.vt.edu. And then we have a full list of continuing education opportunities that are available. And so this is how you get there to the learn and then continuing education opportunities. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, there are steward specific continuing education opportunities. So that's our land care, our tree, and our water stewards. So if you're looking for that CE specific to those, they are there at the bottom of the page. And then we also understand that there's a lot of people across Virginia who might not have internet access or whose internet access might be limited, and they might not be able to watch webinars easily or have really slow download speeds. And we understand that that's a challenge that this last year with everything being virtual has presented. So we wanted to take that in stride and have recently put together a reading list for those who might have limited internet access. So this is also on that continuing education opportunity page at the very top. So you can download and print that and share it with anybody who might need it. And you can receive up to 3 hours of continuing education per book that's read. And before we go on to the Q&A, I do want to send a shout out to George Grain, who did help us put that list together. So he is quite an extensive horticulture library, and he was willing to put that together and categorize it, and he did a really great job. So thanks to George for doing that for us. All right, and this moves us on to the Q&A portion. So if you have any questions that haven't yet been answered, feel free to type them in the chat box and we will get to those. One question that did come in through email to me when we sent out the biweekly last week was in regard to Extension Master Gardener merchandise like shirts and sweatshirts. VMGA has been selling those. Sales are on hold for the rest of this year, but they hope to have those ready to go in early 2021. So if you do need some Extension Master Gardener swag for your wardrobe, feel free to check out the VMGA website in the next couple months, and you'll be able to order for that through them. Let's see. I also just changed the settings. So if you have, you should be able to unmute yourself. So if you have any questions and just want to ask them out loud, feel free to unmute your mic and ask. And Devin, Dave, and myself are all on. So it could be for one specific one of us or all three. All right, it looks like we might have answered everybody's questions during the webinar, which is great. Oh, so looks like
Kathleen, did you see Scott's comment in the chat?
I did. Let me see if I can. I'm going to exit out of screen share. And I think I can.
How about that? Okay. Is it working now?
Yes. Sorry about that, Scott.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. I wanted to try to get some clarification on the new system. If I understand what you're saying, the only thing that's going to be on this Better Impact is basically the record keeping side, like the hours and rosters and that kind of thing. Maybe it's too late, but if that's the case, I do have some concerns because for years, I really focused on trying to convince the master gardeners that VMS is more than just a place to keep records, but it's a central warehouse for all of our documents, that the one place that we can train people to go. And now if they have to go to Better Impact at inner hours, and then if they have a question on what evaluation form do I use for this seminar I'm giving on Saturday, we've got to develop this whole parallel system on Google Drive. So that does give me some pause.
Sure, and thanks for sharing that, Scott. And as we learn a little bit more about the system, I could be wrong on that, but I think I am correct with that. And I do know that this is going to be a transition, just like it was when we transitioned to the VMS. And so there are going to be things that we're going to have to learn and relearn, and processes that are going to have to put in place that are different than what our VMS was. Overall, I still think it's going to be a positive change for our program, and it has a lot of great features that I think are going to be worth it in the end, even if there's some things that maybe aren't quite the same. I'll post the link for the Better Impact website, or their training page for kind of the general training. If you just want to kind of look around what the common, let me see here. So betterimpact.tv, I just posted in the chat box. This is their kind of general training page. So it'll take you through different pieces of the system and what that looks like. And I'm really excited about the system. I know there's really no way to have everything that we need in a system, but we did spend quite a lot of time talking with companies and choosing a program that was going to work best for all of our master volunteer programs. So even though there's some things that we might be losing, I think overall gains are going to be great.
Okay. Well, if it is true that we are going to need to develop an alternative parallel system for all the other things, it might be helpful if we had some support for that. I'm sure that there are many agents and coordinators that are great with Google Drive. I'm not one of them. So some consistency across the state for that part of it seems to me would be helpful too. So you don't have 60 units doing 60 different things.
I think that's a great point, Scott. And that is something that we will work on. We'll be having trainings for our system admins and volunteers in the coming months. So kind of do two different sets of of trainings just from the different type of permissions that people have in the system. I need to meet with our CALS IT and Better Impact before I can set those up, because there's some things that I need to learn about the system before I can start to train other people. There's a couple other questions that have come in about Better Impact. Let me see if I can get to those. Better Impact does have calendars for signups. That is correct. They're just going to be in a different format, so you can't transfer. It's not a one-to-one move for those calendars. So yes, you will have calendars that allow signups for programs through Better Impact. It's just that kind of how it's put in the VMS is not going to transfer over exactly to Better Impact. So Wendy's question about our Master Naturalists moving to Better Impact. Yes, all of our Master Volunteer programs are moving over to the system. So Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists, Master Food Volunteers, our Energy Volunteers, and our Financial Educators. And what's really great is if people are in two programs, they'll be able to enter hours very easily in Better Impact for both of their programs. So that's one thing that's going to be really easy with this that I know was not as easy with the volunteer management system. Okay. Re-enrollment through Better Impact. Yes, that is another thing that I forgot to mention. We will be able to do online re-enrollment through Better Impact. So that will be kind of housed in your system, and each year you can send out a reminder to your volunteers to fill that out. So it's going to be really easy. And once everything's in place, we will also be able to do background checks through Better Impact, which is another big plus. So everything's kind of being integrated. The training, so you can set reminders in Better Impact for trainings. And so that can be your re-enrollment as a reminder, and then also things like civil rights training, risk management, working with youth. So you can set those as reminders, and it'll show you which volunteers have done it, which volunteers haven't, when the last time volunteers have done it, and then you can send push notifications through Better Impact to get those people to complete their trainings, which is great. Another question here about storing documents. As far as I'm aware, yes, that is correct, that those documents will not be housed on Better Impact. And we would encourage you to start a Google Drive at this point to transfer all of those things out of the VMS.
Question. Would Canvas be an option to store some of those documents and things as well? Or is that just too difficult to get everybody on Canvas? Sometimes there's some challenges with that.
Devin, any thoughts on Canvas use for?
You could use Canvas, yeah, if you wanted to. If you were willing to add all of your volunteers as users and then troubleshoot. I think we've been telling people expect to have to help about 50% of the people that you invite to Canvas figure out how to actually get in. But if that's what you decided and you're already using it for training anyway, that would be fine. You would just have to set the course expiration date really far in the future and make sure that you just move it so that it doesn't end, which even if it ends, you can still restart it as the administrator, but your students get it just disappears for them temporarily until you restart it. Another thing you could do is Google Teams. So since Virginia Tech we pay for the premium Google thing, we have this feature called Google Teams where you can set up a shared Google Drive folder and then add email addresses to it, and they don't all have to be vt.edu. You can add just regular Gmail accounts to it, and then you can put documents in it. People can go in and look at them and download them. People can add their own documents to the shared Google folder. The only thing with that is that people do have to have a Gmail account. You can't add someone with a Hotmail account or an AOL to it. So that's a barrier there. Another thing you can do is Google Sites. So if you only need you and maybe like one or two other like VT people need to be able to provide like files and stuff to your master gardeners, and you don't need them to be able to also drop in their own pictures or whatever, you can do a Google site. And you could probably even do like a combination Google site, Google Teams like Drive thing, depending on how like fancy you wanted to get and how many files and like resources you have. But a Google site is really easy to set up. And that's another thing that's free for us with the VT email address. It's basically like, I mean, it's like a website, but it's all very drag and drop. But it's formatted like a website with like the nav bar, and you can make pages, and you can put like you can embed folders, or even you can embed spreadsheets like from your Google Drive or whatever. So that's another thing if you just want to be able to make stuff available to your volunteers and they don't need to be able to like go in and drop pictures into a folder or whatever. And then we'll also check with Cal's IT and see if they have any specific recommendations, because sometimes they think of things that are like things that tech pays for that we don't regularly use that might be helpful.
Thanks, Evan. And to Scott's point, I think we can set up a training on all of these different pieces of Google, the Drive and the sites and all of those, so that all of you will be able to easily navigate that and set those up and be able to work with your volunteers for. And so I think it will be good. It might add another step to some piece, but I think overall, this transition will be a good one. And then I saw Ed's question about the civil rights presentation. So right now, if you or your volunteers have tried to access the civil rights training that Joe Hunnings did, it's through Adobe Flash, which is either already gone away or is going away in the next couple days. And so last I heard, Cal's IT was working on moving this training into video.vt.edu. So that's the Kaltura system. I've not heard if it is 100% ready to go or not, but I think it should be soon. So we'll be sure to send that out as soon as it's ready to go, and as soon as we hear from Cal's IT that it is officially ready to send out and be used by volunteers. So I'm hoping that it will be in the next month or so that we'll be ready to go. All right, Kirsten, impact templates, could you explain what you mean by that?
Thank you. I'm hoping that your office can supply those of us who are tasked with annual reporting some templates that are organized around the major emphasis of the EMG program. You know, whether it's water quality, whether it's invasive plants, or native plant usage, whether it's, you know, whatever you decide are the important reporting categories that you want to report statewide impact on. It kind of links to my earlier question about whether or not there is an effort from the state office to organize Master Gardener reporting into these categories so that we can show statewide impact and make a real difference on that. Dave, I know you have traditionally sent out an impact statement for the state Master Gardener effort in past years. And I guess I'm asking whether or not that's going to be broken up into different categories of reporting this year.
Well, the short answer to that is I'm not sure yet. You know, you and I have had this conversation multiple times offline, and I'm not sure how else to respond differently than I have up to this point, other than, you know, the programming that is done locally can be kind of categorized in these overarching areas, but I'm not sure how helpful that is whether you scale it up or scale it down. And our office has spent considerable time talking about that and talking about it with other folks in the evaluation area, and have not figured out a way that would make it meaningful and not duplicative to what you all already do, and create an extra step that further burdens your reporting. So, the last response that I sent to you, we are still open to that, to identify an area each year that we can report against. And I proposed 4 or 5 different things that Kathleen and Aaron Ling and I discussed weeks ago. So that's the best answer I can give you at this point. The one thing that we will not do is create a further reporting step for the agents. I don't see the benefit in that.
Okay, thank you. I had hoped that with the new unveiling, the new program, the new reporting system unveiling, that it might be set up in such a way for you to really capture, for the state office to really capture statewide efforts in similar categories.
Well, we will accomplish that the way that we've explained by email over the last few weeks.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I hope I found everything in the chat box that was asked. Again, it's not letting everyone unmute themselves, but if you need to unmute, just send me a note and I will ask you to unmute through Zoom. And that seems to be working.
I think if anybody is concerned about, like if you have material like furnacing, it sounds like they have material archived in the VMS that they're going to need to download. For those kinds of things, as a short-term fix, a Google Drive might work for you. When we have like an archival Google Drive for our office that we have stored all of our various people's computers getting switched over. All of those old files are stored in a team Google Drive. So if you just like urgently need somewhere to put all of your VMS files, I can help you. If you email me, I can help you set up just a place to deposit all of those until we figure out what we're going to do permanently. So if anyone is having that problem and is like freaking out about what they're going to do with all their files, you can email me.
Excellent. And again, we'll help everybody who needs help with that, and help organizing documents, setting up drives or Google Sites or whatever needs to be done to make this not an overwhelming task. It is going to be a transition as we move to better impact, and I know especially those who have admin rights in the system, it'll be a little bit of work to get everything set up and to learn it so that you can help your volunteers. I'm learning the system right along with you, and the great thing is that we have a lot of support. So Better Impact has a great customer service and support for their accounts, which is a really wonderful feature. So they respond to, there's like a little chat box and they respond within 5 minutes to questions. So rather than having to go through me and me having to go through folks at UC Davis, it is a one-to-one, really accessible customer service, which is another really great feature. So that should help any volunteers who are having difficulties, or you as an admin who are trying to maybe get something done. So that's another really great thing that I'm looking forward to.
Kathleen, Wendy put a couple more questions in about Better Impact. And while you're reading those, Scott, I just wanted to go back, and I know it doesn't satisfy the question you asked earlier about being able to house documents, but just to reemphasize something that Kathleen mentioned, she and several others, including, I just went blank, Michelle Prisby, excuse me, from the Master Naturalist Program and her staff, and Melissa Chase from Master Food Volunteers, Travis Mountain from the financial side of things, along with Aisha Salazar. We had a large group of people that reviewed multiple programs. And this is also happening on the national level. And there are some other states that are already using Better Impact and others that are considering it. And again, while less than ideal as far as being able to store the documents the way that we have, we really do believe that Better Impact is the best possible package to suit all of the needs that we have, you know, that we've learned about in the shortcomings of VMS and trying to get them to adapt to what we need. Better Impact above and beyond any of the other options was the best fit for us. And from an IT perspective, and it was made very clear to us by Neil Vines and Cal's IT that we had to buy a prepackaged program. We just don't have the capacity to create our own, because ideally we would have built our own and then we could have done with it whatever we wanted, but we just don't have the resources to do that and to maintain that. So Scott, I understand and appreciate your frustration on the document piece. And, you know, I also want to acknowledge all the effort that you and the other agents have put in the last 7 years getting people into VMS. But hopefully some grace will be extended to everybody as we make the transition and again, figure out the workarounds for the shortcomings even of Better Impact, which in my opinion is a much shorter list than we've ever had with any of our other options. So.
Thanks, Dave. So Wendy's question, do all of the project descriptions transfer? So it's likely that we'll need to reset those up at the admin level, and then at the local unit, if there's any ones that we kind of miss, you should be able to add in your own project code. So it's, again, the two systems are so dissimilar and written in different code and all of the tech things that I don't actually understand. The transfer of those kind of information is just not going to be one for one. So on the upper admin level of the state office, we will get a lot of those project codes that are pretty much used by everyone into the system. And so they're ready to be used. And then at the unit level admin, you should be able to add any ones that we missed. So hopefully that answers that question. And then for inactive member data and inactive project data, so I have asked admins to not transfer inactive volunteers into the new system unless you know that they're going to come back to inactive in the next year or so. And that's specifically because we want this system to be a clean transfer. Our VMS, a lot of rosters have people who are inactive, who've been inactive for years, who might be deceased or transferred out or resigned. And so we want to make sure that we're just moving active volunteers into this new system, specifically because we are charged per active volunteer that's moved into the system. So we want to make sure that our numbers are accurately reflected in what we're paying for the system. For an emeritus is just fine because they are considered active volunteers, even though they have that kind of special designated status. Okay. So if you want to pull that inactive data of projects and of members, you can export all of your data from VMS, so you can run an Excel download and then just have that stored on your computer should you need it, if you want to copy paste back into the new system if someone becomes active again. Hopefully that answered the question. Training everyone on the new system during COVID, is that your question, Wendy?
Okay. I get it's a free flowing thought, but when I do the VMS training, we do it in person. Like I get a computer lab for the new trainees and we walk through it where people are asking questions right there and they're trying it. So it's not like a webinar where you can watch it. Like everybody click here, they're clicking there. And I'm trying to figure out how on earth am I going to train approximately 90 volunteers in a new program when we're not supposed to be getting together probably till midsummer or later, depending upon, you know, the future, the near future. How are you thinking of doing the trainings?
I think we'll do them via Zoom in as engaging of a manner as we can. So probably smaller groups We'll definitely have them recorded and posted, but I think ideally if, you know, you can do kind of a split screen, so minimize the Zoom screen and have that on half your computer and the other half of the computer pull up your own, have a volunteer pull up their own account. So then we can actually walk them through each of those steps. And then I'll probably also allow people to be able to share their screen. If we're in small enough groups, I think that these kind of things will be okay. Once you get into 90 volunteers at a time, that gets a little bit tricky. So I think training in smaller groups, especially for those who might not be as easy with technology and with new systems, and it'll just be trudging through this together. But I think that's our best option, just because we really don't have the option of being in a shared space in the coming months. So we need to work with the technology that we have and hopefully get everyone set. And I will be putting a lot of my time into this system the next couple of months. And so I'll be running trainings for our admins and for our volunteers, and we'll be here answering emails and making sure that people are comfortable with the system and as quickly as possible. And we know that there's going to be a learning curve for everybody. And that's just part of a change and of making this move to the new system. But I think once everybody's in it, it's really user friendly, which is great. If I'm not mistaken, people with smartphones, there's actually an app. So you can enter your hours and things like that through an app rather than having to log into your desktop. So there's a lot of features that our VMS did not have that this does have, which is exciting. So as Dave said, it was the best prepackaged system that we found, just because, again, we just don't have the resources to build and maintain our own system. And with that comes all of the customer service, and to have a company, a national company behind us who are working with other groups like ours. Yes, and Barb, I think with admins, with training, it will help a lot. I think everyone will be a little bit more comfortable. I'm feeling the same way. I would really like to be officially trained in this system. And I should have that under my belt in the coming weeks, so then I can help everybody else along. So we're all in this together, and it's going to be a good move. Just bear with us and give us a little bit of grace as we make this transition. I think it's going to be for the better.
Yeah, and Wendy, the only other comment that I would add to that that's not going to answer your question is, you know, in general, I think, you know, it's good for us to remind the volunteers, and we also need to be reminded that this is just going to take time, and there's no high pressure in the sense that it's got to be done tomorrow type thing. So again, you know, just encourage your volunteers to exercise patience with each other and with us and with your offices that as we make this transition, because this is not going to be easy for any of us since we can't be together face to face. But from, you know, the state office's perspective, whether it's volunteer hours or the continuing ed hours or learning this new system, we're going to give however much time is needed for us to be able to do the things that we need to do. So I think maybe it's good and healthy to remind everybody that we did not predict this situation we're in. We're dealing with it the best we can, and we are going to move forward like that.
Okay.
And Ed did have a good point. They do allow you to set up a free account where you can kind of go into a test kind of website or kind of better impact page and play around with it a little bit. I did that a few months back, and it was really interesting and kind of helped me get my head around the system a little bit. So you can do that. And those test accounts only are good for a few weeks. So by the time we're ready to transfer everyone's data, it shouldn't interfere with anything of you being added into the new system. Because it's the difference between that free test account and a paid agency level account.
Fern, to your comment, if nothing else, this has been a good reminder of several things, and patience and priorities are a couple of those healthy reminders we've had.
Absolutely.
And perspective.
Question on, I had a question and I lost it and I got it again. Are we able to go into volunteer profiles with this new one? Like even yesterday, one of my volunteers couldn't enter hours in the VMS system for whatever reason, said it was under construction. I said, under construction. Something was weird with the VMS, and I could get in and put her hours in, but she couldn't get into put her own hours in. She can get into her profile, but whatever it was. I'm like, let me just do it for you, because I knew that the system was leaving and who knows what's going on with it. I like to be able to get into people's profiles and add in their hours, especially driving. They always put in their miles, but they don't put in their time, and I fixed that. Can that be done with this new program too?
Yes, as an admin, you'll have the same kind of permissions to be able to go in and enter hours for folks and do all those sort of things that you might need to.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Again, do keep an eye out for trainings, hopefully within the next couple of months or less, since we're almost in December, which is amazing to think about. I will get those scheduled as soon as I have that meeting with the folks from Better Impact and with CALS IT. So I'm hoping I'll be able to have those scheduled here in the next couple of weeks. So do keep an eye out. Sign up, get your volunteers ready to make this change, even if it's just a notification of, hey, update your profile. We're going to be making this switch in the coming months. Here's what the website for the system is. It's going to be a change, but I think it's going to be a good one. And we will make sure everyone has all of the information that they need to help your volunteers, to help yourself as a volunteer to put information in. So I think it's going to be okay. We will all muddle through it together. Just hang tight with us. And this recording will be posted to our webinar archive. So that's in our website, themastergardener.ext.bp.edu. And then Devin is also going to include it in the upcoming winter in season that should go out here in the next week or two. All right. So I think with that, if there's no other questions, thank you all for joining us. If you have other questions as we get to the end of the year, please feel free to email me or Devin or Dave, and we will get to your questions as quickly as we can. We truly appreciate all the work and time that you give to this program, especially this past year. We know it hasn't been an easy one. So thank you for sticking with us and for navigating all the new policies and guidelines and working to keep volunteers safe and keep yourself safe in this time. So we appreciate all of your time and your energy. We're looking forward to 2021. I think it's going to bring some really great things for our program. So thanks for hanging with us. And with that, I think we're finished. Have a very happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Take care. It's good to see everyone.